Welcome to the 5 on 5. We are pleased to be joined today by Congressman Greg Walden. Congressman, thanks so much for coming in today.
Delighted to be with you.
We've got plenty to talk about. Let's first start with the fact that you've been really outspoken when it comes to combating opioid addiction. Is progress being made?
I think it is. I'm doing a series of roundtables around the district this month to find out what's working on the ground. You know, we passed legislation last year. It's being implemented. Oregon got a $6.5 million grant to help with this project. But I want to hear from those who are involved, parents, people who are dealing with the addictions, people in law enforcement, people in the treatment programs. What's working, what's not, what do we need to do from here? We'll have a hearing on October 11th in the committee I chair, and another one toward the end of the month to look at what we need to do legislatively. A lot of my colleagues have ideas from their districts. We want to hear about them. You know, more people died in Oregon from drug overdose last year than from auto accidents. This is still a serious, serious issue. We're making progress, but there are still problems we need to address.
Another thing you've been talking about, you came to visit Southern Oregon to talk about the impacts of the wildfire season. This week, you conducted a congressional hearing talking about some of those health impacts, as well as forest management reform. What have you learned, and then what's the next step to make changes?
You know, a couple of things. We had a professor from Oregon State University. We had a forest manager that includes area down in here. We had a firefighter from Florida. I mean, all over the country they deal with fire, but from a lot of the country, my colleagues didn't know what we faced until this hearing. And so it was really helpful, I think. We looked at it in terms of clean air and the Clean Air Act, the pollution that comes about from these fires. And clearly the OSU professor said in the east side of Oregon, you've got 1,000 trees per acre where you should have 20. So you have these overstocked forests that when they do catch fire, burn catastrophically. And even this morning here in the Rogue Valley, smoke is still drifting in from the remnants of the fires that have occurred here that still aren't out. So I think we have to look at this. How do we prevent fire? How do we reduce the nature of the damage from the fires, both to our watersheds and to our airsheds? And what do we need to do going forward to restore the fire? My own view, you cut down the burned dead trees where it makes sense. You plant a brand new green forest that helps filter the air. Trees are our lungs. There's a lot we can do here to restore our forests after these fires and reduce the fuel load for a future fire as well.
Well, we've got much more to talk about, Congressman, but we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are pleased to be joined once again by Congressman Greg Walden. Congressman, thank you again for stopping by.
Sure.
Of course, the forefront of the news this week has been the mass shooting in Las Vegas. Do you have any suggestions or thoughts on what could be done to lower this kind of threat?
Boy, I think we're all searching for that. First of all, our prayers go out to those who were affected. I mean, what a tragedy, what a inescapable terrorist horror. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. People in the kill box. I think most of us didn't understand that this weapon could be converted to be automatic in effect. And so I think you're going to see, I signed a letter asking the ATF to take a look at this device that made the weapon shoot as if it were an automatic rifle. It was the ATF that allowed this to begin with during the Obama administration. I think it was in 2010, these stocks that alter the weapon. And I think that ought to be reevaluated, I really do. You don't need that to go deer hunting, you don't need that even to do target practice. But certainly this crazed individual used that modification to get around the automatic rifle rule and law, and we should put a stop to that.
Recently, you strongly admonished the former CEO of Equifax about protecting the public's personal information. Do you anticipate that there will be some legislation in regards to this?
We'll see. You know, and that's what we're trying to get to first is the facts, and then where are the gaps. I'll tell you, though, when we had the hearing and the CEO admitted to me that this was human error, that there was an individual who failed to tell another part of the company they had the software it needed to patch, I can't fix that legislatively, right? I can't, as I said at the hearing, I didn't mean to be disrespectful, but I said, I can't fix stupid. You know, how do you have a system that has all of our records, 145 million people were affected in America, and it gets down to one person telling another person whether or not a piece of software needs patching. There are many other systems that are used in the world that don't have that kind of human interface, or if they do, there's a double check of some nature. This was an incredible failure. There's still lots of questions that need to be answered. But the long and the short of it is we're looking at these breaches and others to figure out what are the common problems here. There are already laws on the books requiring them to safeguard our data, requiring them to have cybersecurity plans. We'll look and see what else needs to be tightened down to protect the data of American users, but we need to put the consumer first and figure out how do you provide some help to the consumers now going to have to deal with this mess with their own credit ratings. They're going to have to refile things. You know, this thing's got a long tail on it, and it's the consumer who's being put out.
Okay. Lastly, what's your biggest takeaway working closely with the president? And would you say that he's working to bring Americans closer together?
You know, I've spent some time with the president, especially in the first part of the year. I found him to be very engaging. He listened when I was in the room, and I was in the Oval Office multiple times, in the cabinet room and elsewhere. He's got clearly his own way of governing. It's a little different than perhaps I have, but I'll tell you, when it comes to our natural resource issues, when it comes to our forestry issues, when it comes to our Western issues, he and his cabinet have been very forthcoming, very involved. You saw the Chief of the Forest Service, Tony Took, was right out here during the fires, ready to go to work. Ryan Zinke, Secretary of Interior, was out here on the ground, listening to all sides on the monument issue. Worked closely with Wilbur Ross, Secretary of Commerce, on the trade issues involving some of the hardwood lumber we manufacture right here. I mean, so from that bigger perspective, I've found he's put some good people in place, and we have an opportunity that's been missing for the last 8 years. And so, you know, my job is to get as much done for our district as I can and our state as I can. I'll work with anybody to get that done.
Congressman, thanks so much for coming in.
Good
We
to be
appreciate
with
having
you.
you here.
Yep.
We'll be
Thank
right
you.
back.